No, I'm on the same computer.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
I
everybody.
think I said hi, eyes. Hi, everyone. I started to say everyone and then switched to guys. So that's what happened. Welcome to Where Are All the Women? We are winning.
Yes, we are. The tide turned quickly.
I know. It seems like it was all of a sudden. I mean, of course, it wasn't. It was just a change in power, which is so interesting because I guess I just didn't realize how swiftly things would change if we kicked the Democrats out. I have to say, as I'm sure you did probably as well, or I don't know, I won't speak to you. I have to say that, of course, what I thought was that if we just got the Democrats out, then we could undo all of this transanity. Similarly to if we get Justin Trudeau out and get Pierre Poilievre's conservatives in, we will also be able to undo all of this, because it seems like the stronghold was the Democrats, both in terms of, institutionalizing this and legislating around transgenderism and gender identity ideology, and of course censoring and silencing and banning and blacklisting anyone who opposed. And here we are at the great turfening.
I know, it's so exciting. And what's interesting is the power hasn't officially changed hands, but the cultural attitude has obviously shifted. And I think the election gave everyone permission to speak freely about how they really feel about this topic. Clearly, Nancy Mace has been educating herself and waiting for this moment. She's not in her thinking. She doesn't seem like a new TERF to me. She knows exactly the right arguments. She is not ceding any ground. She's not playing the whole like true trans or I'm going to be nice card. I think it's really clear she's watched what's been happening in this fight, and she knows how to fight it because she is a soldier.
Yeah, I definitely don't get the impression she's a new TERF.
No.
I mean, first of all, she's very comfortable calling herself a TERF. She also referred to herself as a feminist. I saw in one video, which I found really fascinating because, I mean, women like her, I think, who are Republican, I mean, she's shown, I was just reading up on her today, and she's shown that she's more than willing to go against the party line if it's something that she believes in. So I suppose that's not surprising. But that Republican women, conservative women, right-wing women, women who are trying to oppose woke ideology have really, shat all over feminists in the sort of Matt Walsh vein, which is like, this is the fault of feminists. Where are all the feminists? Why aren't the feminists rising up? And feminism is stupid. And I agree that modern feminism is quite stupid. But, feminism as a whole, the women's rights movement as a whole, is not stupid. So that was surprising to me. And yeah, the way that she speaks about this issue is so uncompromising and like so straightforward.
Right.
And it's just so refreshing and nice to see a politician say, no men in women's washrooms, you're a man, Sarah McBride. And I find it quite thrilling.
I'm so excited. I can't stop following her on Twitter. I'm really excited to watch her fighting. I love it that she has all the right talking points and she's uncompromising and she is calling herself a feminist. And I love it that she's the first female graduate of the Citadel. I don't know if you know about that fight that she was at the forefront of, but the South Carolina military university or college, the Citadel, was this all-male bastion of military leadership, and the fact that she was the first female to graduate from that, this is a woman who knows how to fight and who knows how to stay strong in the face of male supremacy.
Yeah, I did read that she was the first female to graduate from, I again only just read about this today. I didn't know much about her prior. I'm still sort of new to American politics, I guess, so I don't know all the players at all. But yeah, so she was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel's Corps of Cadets program, and she said, this is a quote that I just read from her today, saying, "I'm the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. If some guy in a skirt came by and said, no, that's my achievement, I'm going to be there and standing in the way saying, hell no, I'm not going to allow men to erase women or women's rights."
Wow. So she gets it, that an autogynephile who's a graduate of that college who's older than her could claim that from her. She understands this issue, and it's thrilling because it's again, she's a soldier. She's not just a soldier. She's trained for military leadership and the art of war, and I'm like watching her. It's exactly the TERF we've been waiting for. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
I know, and I'm so glad it's not a man.
I am too. And watching the
men don't get it. Like, I mean, men, I'm great.
It.
I'm super happy for men to support. It's awesome. They have to support. Like, I'm stoked that Trump is on board with this. I'm stoked that JD Vance is on board with this. I'm obviously stoked that Elon Musk is on board with this. But they don't get it, and they've never gotten it quite in the same way that the women who've spoken out have. I'm not saying all women get it, because obviously lots and lots of women haven't gotten it, or at least have pretended not to get it. I think a lot of them certainly are pretending, like, as if women don't know that they would feel threatened if a man walked into their change room and took his dick out while a woman, or maybe, you know, your daughter was in there changing. But like, and they just kind of, I just find that when men talk about this issue, they so often do it while at the same time, again, denigrating or blaming feminism and feminists and women, or talking about it as the anti-woke agenda, which of course it is wrapped up in all that, but it's also this whole other thing. And yeah, it has really been such an enormous attack on women's rights as a whole.
Right. Exactly. That they don't get it. And I'm tired of men also saying, well, you know, they can't go in there unless they have had bottom surgery. It's like, no men in the women's washrooms. Castrated men on estrogen who cross-dress full time are still men. Like, there's no compromise here. And I love it that Nancy Mace is holding that line as well, because there are men with castration fetishes who are autogynephiles. Like, they're, just because a man has had quote unquote bottom surgery, I still don't think he should be in the women's washroom, right? Like, and that the men don't seem to know how to parse that out, that piece of this argument. They don't really understand, like you said, they don't understand the full depth of this situation. But Senator Mike Johnson issued the decree that from today on, the congressional bathrooms are segregated by sex, not gender identity. And that is so exciting to me that it's happening. And Nancy Mace is now introducing legislation segregating all federal bathrooms by sex, not gender identity, on all federal property. So this is going to end up in the Supreme Court. This is going to possibly turn this whole thing around.
I think it is turning the whole thing around. Like, it's just amazing to me. I just didn't see this coming. Yeah, in terms of the swiftness and the universality of it all, you know, because there was so much talk about the sports issue, which is great, and, you know, banning men and women's sports. But I didn't realize right away that we would get to the bathroom issue, and just start saying point blank, you know, these are men. So no, like, there's no parsing, like, well, the trans, maybe they can, again, yeah, like, if they have bottom surgery. I mean, and I get why people would feel confused about that end of things. I think probably that was when I was first getting into this debate and trying to parse everything and figure out my arguments. I had to think about how to respond to those kinds of arguments, or arguments that say, well, what if he passes, right? Like, what if, and somebody actually commented on my Instagram yesterday saying something similar, like, and this was a woman actually, well, but I think there should be some concessions for, trans women as a special category. And I was like, well, what do you mean? What, like, concessions? Why? Like, and she said, well, if they look like a woman and you wouldn't know otherwise, then they're going to be treated like a woman. And I asked, what does it mean to be treated like a woman?
Right.
What are you saying? What? And, she said, well, couldn't they be honorary women? And I said, being a woman isn't an honor. It's not like getting a diploma. It's just a fact. Like, it's not, people get confused. Like, it's not a judgment. We're not passing judgment saying, oh, you're not a good enough woman, or you're the right kind of woman. These are arguments that trans activists have been trying to use all along. It's just, it's black and white. It's you're a man, you're a woman, and the rules. People often talk also about, like, policing genitals. Like, what are you going to do then? Ask for ID or do genital checks at the door? And it's like, we shouldn't have to. You're a man, so get out of here. Like, you're doing this on purpose. Maybe there was a time when there were some gay men who were effeminate and they genuinely were worried about getting beat up in the men's washroom or something like that. I don't think that's a reality today. No. And it shouldn't be women's problem either, but that you're not supposed to be in here, and we shouldn't have to be checking. Most men you can tell, but say there was a man that you couldn't tell. I'm sure that there are some men who are transsexual who trans really, really young. Again, like Blair White or something like that. I don't know. I've never met him in person, so I don't know. That I wouldn't know. But, like, okay, great, you tricked me. Good for you. Like, so you get a reward for that? No, you're a liar. You're all liars. Like, you're lying. Like, there's no, there on some level, it's like you should be discriminated against. Like, I was thinking about, Sarah McBride, probably has made many arguments about discrimination against transgender people, and he's made a big thing, and the libs have made a big thing about him being the first trans in, what is he? He's the first, hold on. He's a senator. So he's a senator? Is the first, Delaware State Senator Sarah McBride became the first transgender member of Congress.
Right, so he's gonna be a member of the House of Representatives, but he had been a state senator.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Yes. And so that's supposed to be some big thing that he's the first nothing.
We've had plenty of men in Congress already. So, and honestly, we probably had plenty of men with a cross-dressing fetish in Congress.
I'm sure.
It's like, what you do in the privacy of your own home is your own business. But, if a man were literally forcing women to participate in his fetish in the privacy of his own home, that's a crime. It should be a crime in Congress as well, to force people into participating in your sexual acting out that you're doing. Yeah, he's going to be supposedly the first transgender member of Congress. And I'm so excited that we're starting it off before he even takes office, calling him a man.
Oh, and yeah, me too.
This is because,
it's like, welcome, stay out of our bathroom.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Exactly. It's so exciting.
Just like congratulations to all the other men.
I love it that Nancy Mace has all of these solid TERF intellectual points, and that she is clearly well-versed in the argument and knows what she's doing and has been watching the fight and knows how to fight it. And I also kind of like that the unhinged, unrefined Marjorie Taylor Greene is just straight up saying, if he follows me into the bathroom, I'm going to beat him up.
She also said in an interview, I just saw that someone asked her a question about Sarah McBride. I don't recall what the question was, but she responded and said, Tim McBride is calling himself Sarah, is a man, and, you know, he can stay out of the women's spaces. That's it. That's the end of story. She was totally also uncompromising about it.
Yeah.
You know,
she represents a chunk of the population. And I know that the intellectual elite hates her. I know that liberals hate her. There is a large percentage of the population that resonates with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and those people have representation in our democracy through her, you know. And I think it's great what she's saying with this, of just that kind of working class, you know, I will beat you up if you follow me into the bathroom because you're a man, is great.
And that I think she also pointed out, like, I shouldn't have to fight this, or I shouldn't have to like argue with somebody. Like, he just shouldn't be there in the first place. So also Sarah McBride was the first trans person, so the first man identifying as trans, I guess, to work in the White House during it was Obama that brought him in, during the Obama administration, and was the first man identifying as transgender to speak at a party's nominating convention when Hillary Clinton accepted the nod in 2016. Joe Biden wrote the foreword to his 2018 memoir. Why do you even have a memoir? This guy is 34 years old. So in 2018, he would have been 28. Is that right? He was born in 1990. And he wrote a fucking memoir? Get out of here. And Joe Biden wrote the foreword to his memoir, The Fascinating Tale of a Man Who Put on a Dress.
Exactly. It's my life as a cross-dresser. These men are so narcissistic, which comes back to that whole, you know, the middle ground. People are like, well, if he passes, he should be allowed in there. Newsflash, they all think they pass.
They do all think they pass.
Right.
The amount of like insane posts that you'll see, you know, like libs of TikTok share and stuff like that. And I get them from various friends all the time, of these men who look like psychotic, creepy, so ugly, with these weird like girl dresses, you know, like frilly pink things on and ridiculous makeup, and they're taking a photo of themselves in the bathroom often, thinking like, look cute today. Like, they're completely out to lunch, completely delusional. This is, I know that's a good point around the, like, what if they pass? They do think they pass.
All of them think they pass.
And they're very angry if you tell them that they don't, right? Don't call me a ma'am, it's ma'am.
Right? It's ma'am guy here in my hometown of Albuquerque. That I can't believe it has progressed this far, where we already had the it's ma'am guy and we still continued down this path. But here we are. The American people are not having it. This issue absolutely contributed to the Republican landslide that we just saw in the election. And the Republicans were very smart to run on it. The Democrats have been completely idiotic to be as uncompromising and committed to the rights of men in dresses. They have, and because they have existed in these insular bubbles where all dissent is forbidden, they really believe the lie that most people agree with this, and they're having a hard time coping with the fact that, I think, you know, at least 80% of the U.S. population is sick of these cross-dressing men and sick of boys in girls sports and sick of men beating up women in the Olympics. This is a mandate, and that's why it's happening now.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I remember talking early on about why the UK women were so much braver than the Canadian women and the American women, because the UK women pushed back hard early on and organized, and they got politicians, not all, but they got some politicians on side. They got media coverage. And we weren't able to achieve that in Canada at all. And in America, it took much longer. And especially, you know, the comparisons between Canada and the UK. Like, I remember being asked that question a lot in interviews and things like that. Like, why do you think that, you know, nothing happened in terms of pushback in Canada, but the UK women have gotten so far? And I asked the UK women the same thing, you know, like, why did it happen differently for you guys? And part of the answer, I think, is that there's just a different culture there where debate is more acceptable and people get more riled up. And in Canada, there's this polite, don't rock the boat vibe. But some of them said, especially the Scottish women, I remember saying to me that part of it was because they watched what happened in Canada and they were like, oh, not here. Like, we're going to be on top of this before it happens.
Yeah.
And I think in America, what happened, this probably happened on some level in Canada too. I think really genuinely early on, people just weren't paying attention and they didn't know what was going on. You know, this didn't hit the main stage, as it were, until the men and women's sports issue, really, I think, you know, when Leah Thomas competed against Riley Gaines, and it was just so insane and so obviously ridiculous and unacceptable and unfair, and it kept happening. And then, yeah, and that's when I think people started really noticing, and then people did start getting really mad, because then it, you know, it was like it was like the families, like it was the dads and the moms who were getting mad, whereas before it was just, you know, the TERFs and then some right wingers.
Well, and it's just started to affect everyone. Like, at this point, everyone knows somebody who's dealing with this in their family, in their school, in their workplace. And they keep trying to tell us this is such a tiny subset of the population. Why do you care? But anyone with kids in college knows that is not true. Like, this is a social contagion. This is affecting way more than 0.5% of the population. And even if it were just 0.5% of the population, why should 0.5% of men get to override all of women's sex-based rights? It's, you know, it's still not okay. I guess it just had to hit a tipping point, because everything we have been explaining to people for over 10 years has come to fruition. Everything we explained was going to happen if we let men have the legal right to be women has happened, and now everyone can see it. So it's time for it to swing back.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that it's so few men who are doing this, they don't call them men. What they say is there's so few trans girls, or they'll say trans students who are competing, so it doesn't matter, just let them have that. I mean, it makes no sense on a number of levels, because obviously if you allow one man to compete as a woman, then any man can compete as a woman, so it'll be overwhelming. But either way, that's still okay. So there's one boy or there's one man who's stealing an opportunity or a scholarship or a win from a girl. There's one man who, you know, there's a volleyball player who I think is paralyzed on one side of her body from being hit in the head by a male volleyball player who is calling himself female. Right. You know, girls and women are getting hurt. And there's just no point. Why have female sports? Why have girls sports? Why have women's sports if you're going to let men play? What's the point? The entire point of having girls only, women's only, female sports is so that they can play and compete fairly, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to if they were competing against men, obviously, because the men are going to be better than them for the most part, and they just won't get to play. They just won't get to compete because they won't be good enough.
Right, totally. And that video you sent me about Tim McBride arguing that there are other things that advantage people in sports, and do you want to ban those as well, was so infuriating.
What about tall girls?
Exactly. What about rich kids? You going to ban rich kids? Like, it's so infuriating that they can't see just how offensive this is and how wrong it is. And the entire reason we have sex segregated sports is because our bodies are different and our physical capabilities are different.
Yeah.
And that women can't compete in sports against men because our bone structure is different, our lungs are different, our muscle strength is different for so many reasons. It's do I like that? No, I wish women were as big and strong as men. I think we would have far fewer problems as a species. But that's
would men still be attracted to us then, do you think?
Yes, they are. I mean, plenty of species that are like, less sexually dimorphic are still having sex and reproducing.
That's true. I think you really can't stop sex from happening. This is the conclusion that I've come to. Like I wrote about the supposed lib fem sex strike last night. The TikTok lib fems who were claiming that they were joining the 4B movement after Trump won because, men voted for Trump, so they clearly don't care about us and our bodies and our rights. Mm-hmm. So we're not having sex with them or dating them or marrying them or having their babies anymore. And I was just like, good luck. I mean, you can't stop sexual attraction. Like you can have self-control, obviously. But I think the only way men and women are really going to ever stop having sex is if they're all drugged, which is happening. But like if you're destroying people's libidos with pharmaceuticals, like if you're putting everybody on antidepressants or anti-anxiety pills or whatever, if you're birth control, then maybe you can block that attraction. Like if you're blocking people from smelling each other's pheromones. Right. But otherwise, this is also why I always find it humorous when young bitter men of Twitter insist that men only want 20-year-olds who look like models. And I'm like, man, ugly people are fucking all the time. Like, do you see how many obese people are married with kids? Like, do you see that older people, people get divorced and they remarry when they're 50 or 60. People are having sex in the old folks' homes still. Totally. People, you can't, most people in the world are not that beautiful. Most people in the world are not that attractive, and they're still getting married and having sex and having babies or sleeping around. It's not how attraction works at all.
I did see some buzz in the what do we call it? The libtardosphere about how that it was transphobic for women to do the 4B protest. And I thought that was interesting that people are still playing that card this many years into this when clearly Americans have had it with this issue. And I am so excited. Really.
Yeah, I think everyone's done. And it's not only that, there's legislation being passed, or what is it that they actually did? So Nancy Mace introduced a resolution to ban transgender women. She says biological men. I think that the news reported it as transgender women, but to ban biological men from entering protected spaces for women on Capitol grounds. Right. So of course, bathrooms, for example.
Yeah, they have a gym at the Capitol, so they're the locker room.
So all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, restrooms, change rooms, locker rooms are reserved for individuals of that biological sex. This is what Johnson said. And then added, it's important to note that each member office has its own private restroom, and unisex restrooms are available throughout the Capitol. Women deserve women's only spaces. And then one guy responded, Rep. Mark Pocan, a Wisconsin Democrat. He said, will the sergeant at arms post officers in the bathroom? Will everyone who works at the Capitol have to carry around their birth certificate or undergo a genetic test? This policy isn't going to protect anyone, but it is going to open the door to rampant abuse, harassment, and discrimination at the Capitol. I mean, I hope that it opens the door to discrimination at the Capitol. I hope that all of these men are discriminated against at the Capitol and everywhere else.
Okay, letting men legally become women has opened the door to rampant abuse of women in the jails, in our bathrooms, in the change rooms at Target, in our sports. These men are so clueless about what is actually happening. The rampant abuse is already occurring because literally any man can walk into our bathroom and say he's a woman and we can't do anything about it.
Does he think that men at the Capitol, like other politicians or something, like other senators or what, like that they're going to be abusing and harassing these, well, one, Sarah McBride. Like, and he has access to these unisex washrooms anyway. So, I mean,
he has his own bathroom in his office.
Yeah.
And he can, if he's down, not near his office, he can go to a unisex bathroom. It's so fascinating what's happening. And it looks, I live in a Twitter bubble now because of my algorithm, but it looks to me like most people are on Nancy Mace's side about this.
Yeah, it looks to me like that as well. And I feel like I get a lot of libs in my algorithm still. Like I see, because if I'm looking at my feed, I just look at the For You. I don't look at the following thing. I look at whatever the algorithm thinks I want. And I get a lot of lib. I've seen a lot of people leaving Twitter, announcing that they're leaving Twitter, celebrities, journalists, media people, whatnot. I saw people who were saying that they were, scared and grieving over Trump's win. So I don't think I'm in as much of a bubble as sometimes I think that I am. I mean, that was what I was worried about with the election, is that I thought, like, I wasn't ready to say, oh, I think Trump will win, because I just didn't trust what I was seeing. Because I was like, as far as I can tell, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Trump and people are really done with the Democrats, but maybe that's just what I'm seeing in my algorithm. But it turned out that that was accurate. So, yeah, I saw this post that I think Libs of TikTok shared recently from, I think it was an old post from Sarah McBride. I don't know how old. Maybe it wasn't that old, actually. I can't tell when it's from. But so he posted a selfie of himself in the women's washroom. They always do this. Jessica / Jonathan Yaniv did this. He was always posting selfies of himself in the women's washroom. And he writes, "Here I am using a women's restroom in North Carolina that I'm technically barred from being in. Good for you. Breaking women's boundaries. They say I'm a pervert. They say I'm a man dressed as a woman. They say I'm a threat to their children. They say I'm confused. They say I'm dangerous. And they say accepting me as a person I have fought my life to be seen as reflects the downfall of a once great nation. I'm just a person. We're all just people trying to pee in peace. Living as fully and as authentically as," I don't know what the last word is there, but the living authentically is always an amusing,
right?
Like insistence from these guys. It's like, you're not living authentically. You're lying about who you are. Right. Like you can dress however you want to dress, and I guess you can call yourself Sarah or whatever if you want to, and you can get cosmetic surgery, but you can't say that you're a woman or that you're not a man, because that's just not true.
Exactly.
You're lying. So you're not being authentic at all. You're being the opposite of authentic. And you're also trying to bully everybody else into lying as well. You referenced that video that I posted earlier that I got from Michael Knowles. He posted a thread about Sarah McBride on the 14th, I think. And he was just, he was trying to, insist that it was transgender girls or women that were being picked out and discriminated against, and pretending that they weren't actually men, and that the point of banning males from female sports was, again, to discriminate against transgenders, not just to say point blank, no biological men and women's sports. Right. And he's just such a manipulative little smug bully. I'm just so glad that all these smug little shits are being ignored and pushed out, and nobody wants them anymore.
No.
They're losing, and you can tell that they're losing because everybody, so many of these people are changing their tunes really, really quickly. Like I saw Jank, from the Young Turks posting about, the Democrats are the elite and they've gotten it all wrong, and the Republicans are doing it right, and they've ignored the working people. And it's like, oh, tell us about it. Like so many people have been saying this for so long, and now that you've all of a sudden realized, just like Anna Kasparian did, that you're now on the wrong side of history after calling everybody racist and transphobic for years and years and years, and fascists, and being so hyperbolic about people who supported Trump. And now all of a sudden you're just this, listen to me. I'm speaking the truth. I'm like, now you're following your paycheck. Give me a break.
Yeah.
I don't buy this.
They're on the run. They are on the run. Even AOC took the pronouns out of her bio. They see the tide turning. I like you, I had no idea I could flip this fast. Even though I know history, like I know fads fall out of fashion quickly, I thought this was going to be more like some of the other insane medical things I've seen happen and just in the world of primary care and birth, that just we're stuck with it, even though everyone knows it's causing worse outcomes. We're stuck with it, but this seems to be flipping pretty quickly, and I am here for it. I really hope that continues.
Yeah, I mean, and I wonder about this because I interviewed Jennifer Billick recently. And she obviously sees it as part of a broader, transhumanist agenda, and sort of the getting rid of sex and the sexed body entirely. That's driven by these billionaire, big tech, big pharma guys. So she doesn't see it as being about men identifying as women necessarily, and, who's using what space. Of course, she's against all these things, but I think she sees it as more of a attempt at a transhumanist revolution than anything else. And I don't know, because it seems like if we can end the transing of kids and end this men identifying as women and people identifying as non-binary, and just be able to plainly say you're either male or female, end of story, then we're good, I think, on that end. I mean, I'm sure that lots of other bad things are going to happen around this, but messing around with people's bodies and trying to grow babies in test tubes,
right?
Or, like external uteruses or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the surrogacy situation is out of control. Elon Musk is a transhumanist in many ways. He's got all of those purchased babies.
And the implanting of tech into people's brains and things like that's all part of the transhumanist agenda, right? Like you're half human, half robot.
Right. I see where she's coming from. I think there's plenty of money in transhumanism. Like we no longer, like transgenderism was the point of the wedge, and I don't think it's necessary for them anymore. I think that they can still push the brain implants and the robots and the robot dogs. Did you see the AI armed robot dogs patrolling Mar-a-Lago?
No.
So freaky. Yeah, that's Elon
I don't
Musk.
like that at all.
No, I don't like it at all either. It's really freaky.
Like, what if somebody bad gets the remote?
Or the AI makes a bad decision. Like it's really,
I don't know how people could not be totally terrified by that kind of thing. It's like, no, I don't want a robot in my house. Yeah. What if it gets a bad idea?
And I don't want the police to be replaced by AI robot dogs with semi-automatic weapons.
No.
Any kind of policing robot, but we're getting that.
Lord.
So I think that they can push the transhumanist thing. Like they can just drop the gender stuff at this point. I think that autogynephiles are hopefully going to get pushed back into the privacy of their own homes, aka the closet. Like they don't need to be out. Like, don't need to
no,
be
you
out.
don't. You don't need to be out with your fetish or your cross-dressing or whatever you feel about gender even. Like I know that there are some boys who were just gay and bullied and,
Mm-hmm.
grew up in homophobic families or homophobic cultures. I know that not all of these guys necessarily have a fetish and that some of them have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just trying to deal with being gay by being like, oh, I'm a girl. Phew, this all makes sense. Right. And, but I don't know. Yeah, we don't, everybody in the entire world doesn't need to know how you feel about femininity, how you feel about masculinity, how you feel about your sexuality. I mean, I think that the main things are, gay rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been accomplished in North America.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to get back to acknowledging you can't change your sex. And I have a few strings of empathy for all of these people who've been trans in childhood who are
Yeah.
going to be stuck.
I do. I have a lot of actually empathy for them, unless they're being horrible now. But I do feel really bad for people who were duped by their therapists and sexologists or pushed into this by their disgusting, horrible parents who I can't even, what are these parents thinking now? The parents who trans their kids and then are seeing that this is all coming to an end and it's too late for what they've done to their kid.
I think that they're probably freaking out, but that, societal momentum is not behind them anymore. It must be hard for them to be reckoning with what's obviously happening. I think we're going to see a bunch of arguments like, oh, if you've already been trans in childhood, you get to pass. But we have to hold the line. It doesn't matter. You can't change your sex. And even if you were neutered as a child, castrated as a child, had a mastectomy as a child, and you've been on cross-sex hormones, that doesn't make you the opposite sex, and it doesn't give you the right to enter the opposite sex facilities. It's very sad that so many people were hoodwinked and conned by this, but that doesn't mean women have to give up their rights.
Yeah, totally. For people who are watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. This is Mary Lou Singleton. I'm Meghan Murphy. I think I forgot to say that early on. We were too excited about the great turfing. And if people have any comments or questions or things that you want us to address, please use the super chat. Yeah, so I think that Canada's next. I think that this is, stupid Canada is always just sort of following America around like a lost puppy dog while also pretending to be superior to America and Americans. But, they're following along by, supporting a populist essentially and getting over the woke stuff. It's just most people aren't brave enough to say so. But I think now after watching all this, people will get braver. And we saw in the BC election, the Conservatives, they didn't end up winning in the end, but they did really, really well, in large part on account of, the same reasons that the Republicans succeeded in the American election. They started talking about crime, addiction, men and women's sports, and,
the economy,
the price of groceries, immigration.
And when you list those things off, I don't know how anyone is surprised that the incumbents did not win. I don't know how liberals are still so shocked that this happened. It's just, I don't know how I was so worried it wouldn't happen, but I think it's because I don't trust our electoral system, and I just sort of bracing myself. But
I didn't trust the system at all. Like I thought like I know that if the Democrats had won, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
So, which I know is bad. I'm not supposed to do that, but I just, just because Kamala was so unpopular.
Oh, she was a terrible candidate. She was a terrible candidate in 2020. She was not loved as a vice president. this is such a good example of how if someone doesn't have innate charisma and star power, no amount of money and Hollywood glam can make that person charismatic. They couldn't do it. They couldn't shine her up enough.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing about all of this, which I've mentioned before, but I'm so thrilled that Hollywood stars and celebrities are irrelevant to people's opinions about anything.
Yeah.
You know, and they're sort of like, they're so stupid, you know, the actors and actresses, like I think 99.9% of them are just really, really dumb and superficial and self-absorbed. So this isn't surprising in any way, but you know, I saw like Gabrielle Union, who lots of people apparently don't know who she is. She's an actress. She made this big post about how she was leaving Twitter, and you know, she had a great time here, but it's all come to an end, and thanks for everything. Like she's making some acceptance speech, like anyone cares if Gabrielle Union leaves Twitter, but you know, they're not getting that people are really like, we don't care. We don't care what you think. We don't care who you are. You're not impressive. We weren't impressed by Beyonce. We weren't impressed by J-Lo. You know, we don't care about all these like white dudes for Kamala and what celebrities are involved in that. We don't care what Mark Ruffalo thinks. We think that you're all idiots, you know. And not only do we not care, but it sort of, I think it actually contributed to this, for sure, is how I felt, people not liking the Democrats. It's like, oh, wow, you have Hollywood on side? We've all learned that Hollywood is disgusting. It's like, you guys were all at Diddy's parties. Get out of here. Like,
and it gave the impression of, oh, you're on the Diddy list. You have to do everything we say. So show up at the Harris rally and
totally
and spout the party line. I really think Hollywood worship is over. I think that we're at this wonderful tipping point with things. I'm excited. I'm ready for the pendulum to swing. I know I will have new things to complain about, you know, when it continues to swing in the right direction. But right now I'm here for it. I'm also super excited. All the women in sports standing up right now about the San Jose State volleyball player, and women on his team are suing it for Title IX violations and civil rights violations. I think one of the coaches is suing about a civil rights violation that she feels like her rights have been violated by having to support this male. All of the women refusing to play and being willing to forfeit games, which is a big deal for competitive athletes. These are women who've poured their lives into training and spend so much time. Like college athletes are managed like racehorses, right? Like they have to work really hard to be on those teams, and they're willing to forfeit matches to protest this. That's a great uprising to be watching as well.
Yeah, I think this is all over in America in any case. And I think soon in Canada, I mean, Canada is still in a pretty bad way. There was another incident of a man in a girl's change room on Vancouver Island in the Victoria area, and the mother of the daughter who was in the change room with this guy complained, and they told her she needed to be inclusive and that people are welcome to use whatever change room applies to their gender identity. But of course, Victoria and Vancouver Island have no idea what's going on in the real world. You know, like, of course, you know, I think in general, a lot of, you know, progressive Canadians demonstrate over and over and over again. I suppose just like the libs in America, due to that they have no idea what the majority of the population is thinking and concerned with. So these are government workers, right? Like if you work at a pool, like at a community center, that's a city facility. So all the government workers, for the most part, are going to be on board with the NDP/liberal agenda. And yeah, they're still in a super algorithmic bubble and they're still watching the CBC and what the Canadian news is 100 times worse than the American news because there's no genuine right wing or, you know, any alternative, you know, like the vast majority of Canadian news is super progressive. The National Post is referred to as like a conservative paper, so they'll actually post interesting op-eds challenging this stuff. And then there's, you know, True North and Rebel, which are right wing. But everybody else is progressive and ridiculous and liars, and they're not doing any journalism at all, and they wouldn't tell the truth about anything COVID related. You know, they lied about transgenderism and continue to, and so I do think there's a lot of Canadians who will probably be
sorry about my phone.
That's
okay. I forgot to put it away.
You know, I'm hoping, and I think they're also going to have a rude awakening come the federal election. I think there's going to be even a bigger wave of support for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, and I'm hoping that those politicians get even more bold about their opposition to transgenderism and the transing of kids and all this stuff, watching what happened in America. And I'm sure that they will. They'll see, okay, this is what's happening. This is what the people want. We don't need to mince words about this.
I hope. I think you're likely right about it. I hope the shift is going to happen up there as well. There is so much more of a media lockdown and just no right to free speech, and yeah, it's a different situation. What do you think's happening?
Oh, I just said in the comments, Generation Y says it's not over in the blue states. And said Meghan said gender madness is pretty much over in the US, but then yeah, it's not over in the blue states. But I think, I mean, I think that they'll have to follow along. Don't you think? Don't you think they'll have to follow along with what the president's saying?
I wonder what will happen. You know, I live in a blue state. Things are
like, can it be that divided where like one state over, it's like no men in women's washroom and no men competing in women's sports, but just in San Francisco, you know, or whatever, like just in California. I think if you go to California, if you go to university in California, you're allowed to compete as a girl. Like, I don't know. I don't think so.
I think that the politicians in those states will say that they won't enforce it in the same way they say they're not going to go along with any of the new immigration policies. They won't participate in deportations of people who were here illegally. And I don't know how it will actually play out. I think that there's a good chance that there'll be a lot of bluster about it. But if if Mace's bill passes, barring males and, segregating bathrooms by biological sex on all federal property, I wonder how they will deal with that in the blue states. They'll be in violation of federal law. I think if Trump overturns these hideous Title IX revisions that the Biden administration puts through, they'll have to follow that. And that's what happened during the last Trump administration. He did set that stuff back. We still saw boys playing on girls' teams in the blue states, but the women in those states will have more of a weight behind them to fight it. And then things can get to the Supreme Court and get sussed out there. It's not completely over. People are very invested in this, and the people who live in the liberal algorithmic bubble and the people who have literally dedicated their lives to gender ideology are going to be really upset by this and feel very defensive, and there will be fighting happening. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah. I think it's on its way out. And the media control over this issue is done. Because people aren't going for it. They already were having to start shifting their narrative and already were publishing pieces about questioning the necessity or the inherent goodness of transing kids and things like that. So I think it is on its way out, even for the libs. And they're just going to pretend. The worst thing is that they're all going to pretend that they never did this. They're like, oh, we just didn't know, and there's new information. We're just thinking rationally, and now we've learned new things, and we think this, and we're not even going to acknowledge that we were the ones who pushed this all along like a bunch of dum-dums.
Exactly. What do you think of Brianna Wu's rational trans people coalition he's trying to put together? He's trying to organize. I know Colin Wright just gave them a bunch of airtime and went and spoke with them. And Colin was very. Did you follow that at all?
No.
So
I mean, I think I saw that he was on Brianna's podcast, but I didn't watch it.
Is Dollcast is Brianna's podcast with these
I guess,
other,
sure.
Yeah. They're upset
Gross
about
cast. Go cast.
They're upset about they don't like non-binary people. They say that's not real. They call themselves binary trans people, that they are that there is a sex binary and they want that to be maintained. They don't like the obviously over the top ridiculous parts of gender ideology beyond saying a castrated.
No, they like it. They're just saying they don't like it because they want an in.
Do you really think that they like the non-binary folks? I think
no, but I think they went along with all the gender identity nonsense forever and ever until it became a good move to not go along with it. I don't know if they liked it or not, but they certainly went along with it all. Like, I'm sure that Brianna was on board with they, them.
He's angling for kind of a gender recognition certificate that you have to be medicalized. He uses that term. You have to have authority figures say that you actually have, done all kinds of crazy stuff to your body. You have to be dependent on the cross-sex hormones. And then
he's scared that he's going to lose state-covered hormones for him and for kids.
Certainly rich enough to pay for his own freaking estrogen.
I'm sure he could afford it. And I mean, are bioidentical hormones ever covered in America, or is that always coming out of women's pockets? Yeah,
compounded bioidenticals. And honestly,
I think that's crazy because it's like women, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to argue that women need them, but it certainly, alleviates actually serious health side effects, I guess, of menopause, like bone loss and your bone density loss and, all the other insomnia and getting fat, like your metabolism slowing down, hot flashes, yada, yada, yada.
Well, the bioidenticals are made in compounding pharmacies. Like, that's small pharma versus big pharma. So they're not FDA approved, and they're never going to be covered by insurance companies that are really wrapped up in big pharma. But even FDA approved treatments for menopause that are hormonal are often not covered. Women have to pay out of pocket for vaginal estrogen cream. Women have to pay out of pocket for hormone replacement therapy.
And these men are getting it all covered and in huge, way larger doses. Like bioidentical hormones, those doses are pretty minuscule as I understand it. And these guys are taking really significant doses of estrogen, and it's all being covered by the state because it's life-saving.
And it's making them even more crazy. It's really making them more erratic and crazy. And
does it? I mean, I believe you, but I'm just
taking synthetic hormones changes your emotional state. It's well known. I mean, roid rage, like taking a lot of testosterone change, even men taking a lot of testosterone is going to change how they feel. Taking a lot of estrogen, every woman who's been on birth control knows that.
Right.
It absolutely changes your cognition and emotional response and ability to regulate your own emotions.
Right.
Yeah. I just, that's my fear, is some kind of freaking compromise. And that's why I love
me too.
Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene being completely uncompromising.
Yeah, I think we just have to keep calling Brian a man. Like, so I don't know, maybe he's getting away with it right now, but so many people online every time he posts anything. You know, he won't allow comments underneath his tweets from people that aren't his followers because he gets ratioed every time. And even then you'll see stuff, you know, everybody's like, this is a man, you know, I saw underneath when Trigonometry posted their second interview with Brianna Wu, you know, saying like, why are you giving this guy airtime? Like, this man is a grifter. This guy is sketch. You know, I think that people aren't having it anymore. So I don't know that he'll get away with what he's attempting. I certainly hope not. And it's annoying to me that people are falling for it, like Mary Weiss and
and Constantine and Francis are falling for it. I just don't understand why anyone's falling for it, especially that guy. He has a worse history than Tim McBride does in terms of just being an absolute jerk to women and being.
Oh, and he's just lied and lied and lied for his entire career. You know, that whole Gamergate thing was him pretending to be harassed. He faked his own harassment. He claimed to be, first of all, he claimed that it was misogyny because he was pretending to be a woman. So he was claiming that he was being harassed in the gaming world as a woman, but he wasn't. He was a man, of course, and he wasn't being harassed. He was posting comments from himself under different names and, you know, not being very tidy about it. So people discovered it. That was all BS.
You know, he has
to have a college degree for a long time, and he didn't have a college degree.
That he has so much power and access to power that he was able to completely like erase anything that indicated he was actually trans, and left people questioning. Like everyone could tell he was trans, but you couldn't find any proof of it except on Kiwi Farms. And he continued that game up until a couple of months ago. He's like, oh, you know, what makes you think I'm trans? I'm like, well, you're 6'4" and you have an AGP voice, and you're like sneering at women, and you just seem like a creepy, perpy man. So that's why I think you're trans.
And the TERFs are calling you a man, and the TERFs were right, and they're always right, and they'll forever be right. What's the permanent quote that I use from Mary Lou, which is, what is it? The TERFs. The TERFs are right, and the TERFs will always be right. Something like that.
It's so true. I mean, every TERF knew this guy was an AGP.
Yeah, nobody listened to them because they were a bunch of crazy, rabid, radical feminists.
They have to be so mean about it.
Yeah, they were being really mean. Anyway, so good news, good times, lots of thrilling, exciting things happening. The Trump win, now the great turfing of America. I've ended my man strike.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, really? I decided to. Yeah.
Yeah. What's his name?
I've just we'll talk about that another time. But I have decided I'm ready to end my man strike. I was like, but I mean, I really did. I really think I was like, I'm taking a man break for like a year, and it's been about a year, and I feel ready to move on. I think from that. So we'll see how it goes. This might be a huge disaster. Probably, knowing my history, this will just be another huge mess, but I suppose that's all part of being human. This is I just get myself into trouble. If I allow myself to have a libido, then it's always trouble. But I don't know how other people manage to be rational and to be interested in the opposite sex at the same time.
It's not rational. Yeah.
People act like you can be sane and make rational decisions. I'm like, okay, robot.
I know. Exactly. Yeah, it's exciting. Hopefully we'll have more good news next week. You know, hopefully it'll just get better and better on the great, turfing of the United States.
Yeah. What a positive stream this has been.
Yes.
I feel like often our streams are a bit dark.
We did talk about robots.
Robot police dogs.
Right. As opposed to the
kill us
good
all.
kind of robot dogs. No, I kind of opposed to all robot dogs, but especially
like real dogs. I like real dogs. Thank you, Richard. Richard says we're asking once again to see Mary Lou Singleton's quilt.
This is
Did
my
you make
quilt.
this?
No, this was made at a women's gathering that I did in 2016, 2017. Every woman made a square. I'll show you my square. Let's see. Well, you can't. Mine is down here.
Is this what happens at women's festivals? You guys make quilts?
Every woman made one. It was the whiptail lizard gathering. The whiptail lizards are lizards that live here in New Mexico that are all female, and they I know they reproduce by parthenogenesis, and they're not clonal. They scramble their own DNA, and they're lesbians. That they the females orally stimulate each other's genitals to induce ovulation and to make more lizards. So it's the whiptail lizard gathering. Yeah. Now that's where that came from. So it's just a bunch of great quilt squares made by a lot of great women.
I feel bad because I insulted women-only gatherings in my last post. I didn't insult them. It's just not the kind of thing that I like. I was like, other people like this kind of thing. I don't really like women-only things.
Oh, really?
No, I find them kind of yucko. I feel like there's too much tea drinking and folk singing and not enough like burping and rap music and
probably not rap music, but definitely, we can have
not enough loud crass jokes, but maybe.
I love female only space, but I'm also, I live with a man and, I have a son, and I get a lot of not female only space in my life. And to me, it's nice to have a retreat into just female only space.
Yeah.
But
each their own. Okay. I think that we're good here.
All right. So good to see you.
Great. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're here every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is Where Are All the Women? And I'm Meghan Murphy. This is Mary Lou Singleton. You can find Mary Lou online at enchantedfamilymedicine.com, on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton, on X at Singleton_ML.
At ML_Singleton. Yeah. Is it? I always have to look.
ML_Singleton.
Yeah, that's it.
I would deeply appreciate it if people would subscribe to my Substack, which you can find at meghanmurphy.ca or just by searching Meghan Murphy on Substack. If you become a paid subscriber, you get early access to all of my podcasts, to all of the video interviews. Most of my articles are behind a paywall, so you get access to all my articles. You get to comment on things, and you also support my work so that I don't have to work for somebody else, so that nobody can tell me what to do. So I really appreciate that as well. And today is my return to Twitter anniversary.
Yay!
So 2 years ago, Elon, and with the encouragement of Rogan, brought me back to Twitter, now X, and I've been thoroughly enjoying myself ever since. Twitter's the best. I'm so glad that Elon bought it, and I just have so much fun there calling men.
Yay.
So I'm there at Meghan E. Murphy.
I just want to say, Maisha, who's watching, says her square is on the quilt. I can't remember which one is hers. She'll have to let me know, but that's exciting that someone who was at the gathering sees her square on the quilt.
I like the bee also. Somebody in the live chat said they like the bee.
Yeah,
I always like bee things. Okay, I think that's all.
Well,
have a good night. See you next week.
Take care. Have fun being back in the realm of dating and being with men.
I don't know if I'm gonna go on any dates, but I've Maybe. I guess I am going to have to if I've ended my man's trying. I'm not much of a dater. I sort of like meet men organically, as I suppose what I mean.
Have
I'm not
fun
much
with
of a
that.
like, yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.